that's not the majority. They came to this country by ship, by plane, or by bus. Currently, our Border Patrol does not have adequate resources to track these individuals who overstayed their visas. Comprehensive immigration reform will help fix a broken system of laws and its procedures, provide enough tracking methods, and strengthen our borders, something our federal government has failed to do. It is also making immigration in the U.S. a more equitable system. There are laws currently on the books to enforce immigration, but as the need for labor went up before this recession, political and business leaders avoided enforcing them. During our golden years in the 1990s, when America was running surpluses, no one was complaining about immigration. Immigrant labor helped build new homes, shopping strip malls, and because of the result of subcontracting, when Joe subcontracted to Jim, who then subcontracted to a contractor, who eventually hired undocumented workers. This has always been the case in America. Immigrant labor has always been around. The building we are in today probably was built by immigrant hands, and the food that's served on this campus in your cafeteria was probably harvested by immigrant hands too. Your desire to pay low prices and the businessman's desire to increase his profit margin are two of the main reasons undocumented labor exists in this nation. Since 9/11, the bashing of immigrants has become popular. At the forefront of this bashing are Hispanics, who take front and center in video montages by right-wing cable hosts, images that include people crossing the border, people that are, poverty-stricken faces, people in handcuffs. That is the image that they want you to see. They don't relay the positive economic impact of immigrants. In Texas, immigrants contribute more in taxes than they get in public service. They receive in health services and education. These facts came from a report during the Republican Governor Perry administration back in 2005. When an immigrant pays his or her rent, a portion of that rent goes towards the landlord's county taxes. When an immigrant fills up his or her tank, there are no gas taxes that are automatically deducted. He or she pays the full amount. Everybody, regardless of citizenship, pays the local sales tax. When an immigrant pays their phone bill and those same fees that none of us understand what we're paying for, they also get to pay those fees. What we have here is scapegoating. The reason our economy tanked this past decade is not because Jose and Maria decided to take customer service jobs in Dallas with no papers. The economy tanked because of risks major banks took up there in Wall Street and the spending habits of American citizens who decided to take on mortgages they couldn't pay. That sent off a ripple effect in our economy. Now couple this with two expensive wars that we're still engaged in, and even though we're out of Iraq, we're going to be in there for another 2 or 3 decades. Couple this with that, the nation's outlook for our financial health is gloomy. It comes to, it's much easier to blame the immigrant rather than to look ourselves in the mirror. It comes natural to bigots who are in charge. Just look what happened in Germany circa 1929, and it proves that when a mighty nation goes south, those in the minority pay the price. Do me a favor and laugh at people who say that their great-great-grandparents came to this nation legally. America had open borders back then. Anyone with a dream could come and pursue it. It was not until 1882 that the U.S. government enacted its first regulation with the very racist Chinese Exclusion Act. Apparently the Chinese immigrants were great to build our railroads and help mine gold in California, but when the gold was gone and the economy tanked, Congress passed a ban on them. Our last law based on race is Arizona's SB 1070. The only determination of an immigrant is left to the eye of the beholder. I promise you that that unrestrained power given to that law enforcement official that has not properly been trained for federal work will be used, sadly, to racially profile people. We need comprehensive immigration reform. We have children that were brought to the United States who only know their lives as Americans, We have American-born children left behind because their parents have been deported. We have couples in committed relationships that face an uncertain fate because one is undocumented. America has given itself permission to lose its moral center and start locking up whole families in prisons. Outsourced industries have taken over the detainment of individuals who have been separated from the society they knew and loved, including those U.S.-born family members. I want to personally thank my sister in social justice, Dr. Juanita Wallace, president of the Dallas chapter of the NAACP. When this African-American leader was asked about what she thought of the immigration issue, she gave an enlightened answer. Rather than playing into the good old boy white strategy of winning political battles in the South by pitting black versus brown, she said she favors comprehensive immigration reform for those families who are already here and contributing to society. She said African Americans know their history and how during the days of slavery, families were torn apart, sold, and never heard from again. Blacks know the struggle and pain. They will not stand to see history repeated. Please listen closely to another sister in justice, Adriana Cadena, about the current anti-immigrant bills being considered in the state legislature. And please stand up for those who cannot vote, who have no voice during this very sad part of our American history. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Adriana Cadena. I am the coordinator for RITA, which is Reform Immigration for Texas Alliance. We have different organizations from every corner of Texas who are part of this alliance that came together to have a common voice in Texas for and to fight for comprehensive immigration reform. Jesse, thank you for your words. Definitely, I think that Jesse did an excellent job of setting the stage in terms of giving us a brief overview just in the last few years of the situation for immigrants in the United States. I want you to take a good look at me right now and determine if I am an illegal alien. How illegal do I look? Well, actually, you may laugh, but when I came to this country as a young child of 5, 6 years old, I don't remember now, I came crossing the river. And I came the first time with my mother because my father was already here, and my siblings and I came. And I remember the first time we crossed, we actually were detained by Border Patrol and sent back. So guess what we did? We tried again. That's right, because my dad was here, and he was working here, and this was where my parents felt that this was the land of opportunity. This was America, where the dreams come true. And we tried again, and this time we made it. And thank goodness, I grew up just outside of here of Dallas in Waxahachie, very different town than what it is today. And in 1986, there were advocates. Well, before 1986, there were advocates who fought and who brought the 1986 amnesty. Do you all remember that? That was an opportunity where thousands of people would be able to become legal residents. And I was one of those beneficiaries. So, am I an illegal immigrant? No, I'm now an American citizen. And I was never an illegal immigrant. I was maybe undocumented, but because there was a group of people who fought for rights of those less fortunate, I am here with you today. I was fortunate enough to graduate from one of the best universities this country has to offer with a bachelor's in foreign service from Georgetown University. And just like me, there's thousands now of young people in this country who want to have that dream and realize that dream as well. So, I bring this up because sometimes we talk about immigration or we talk about immigrants as a third person, as if we don't know someone. And all of us know someone who's been in that situation or is in that situation. So it's really important to keep the humanity of that in our hearts and in our minds when we are discussing these issues. Now, I just wanted to take a few moments today to talk about what's going on in our state, in the great state of Texas. As most of you know, this is a quote from the preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In the immigrant rights movement, as part of RITA, we believe that this is not a struggle for immigrants' rights, but this is a struggle for human rights. Because even after we reach comprehensive immigration reform, even now, there is still a greater struggle to reach equality, to reach justice, and to reach the opportunity for every single individual to have adequate housing, adequate wages, health care, actively participate politically, culturally in their communities. So it's not just about receiving a piece of paper, but it's greater. It's about full integration and full acceptance into American society. As Jesse mentioned, there has been an erosion of immigrant rights in the last few years. And there's always been a love and hate relationship between the United States and how its treatment towards immigrants. But just most recently, what we've seen across the country is a wave, an anti-immigrant wave of states and cities trying to act upon immigration policy. There's been an increased removal of immigrants from this country since 9/11, and while those removals have been up because there's been removals of what they would call criminal immigrants, the reality is that people who continue to be removed are actually individuals who have done nothing wrong than to be here without proper documentation. At the same time, there is an increased rate of states who have denied identification cards, whether it's driver's license or ID cards, to individuals who are here without status. When I started my career in this movement, Texas was one of the states that still provided driver's licenses or didn't ask for a social security number or for legal status for someone to obtain a driver's license or to obtain an identification. That was just, 12, 13 years ago. And now Texas is one of the states that has one of the strongest, strictest requirements in order for individuals to be able to obtain something simple as a driver's license. Again, there's the tension with our representation. There's an increased militarization of our border. I live in El Paso, Texas, and I can tell you that every time someone says that the border is not secure, we see thousands of Border Patrol agents roaming our streets, being in our communities, and those are Border Patrol agents who are not necessarily from our communities. And there's a constant clash of cultures and a struggle of border residents having to live with that presence and having to be stopped and constantly being asked for their documentation. And there's always the criminalization of work. Before 1986, the amnesty law was passed, there was no such thing as employer sanctions, where you were asked to prove your citizenship in order to work in the United States. Now there is, and if you don't have that proof of citizenship, then that means that you are basically a criminal and that you should not be able to work in the United States. Now, I just wanted to, again, specifically talk about what do we see in the state legislature. As you all know, the legislature is meeting right now. There's been over, 60 or more bills that have been introduced that basically target this population. And it's a very different legislature than even in the past years. There's over 100 Republicans, many new Republicans who were actually voted, whose platform included an anti-immigrant agenda, who included, who have the support of Tea Partiers. And so they want to throw something out to their base. And the way to do that is to specifically focus on scapegoating on one of the most vulnerable sectors of our communities, and that is immigrants. There is proposals that remove educational rights. There's proposals that challenge the 14th Amendment, that is the right to citizenship when you are born in this country. There are several proposals on English only, as well as additional proposals to try to criminalize and penalize workers. And there is a very strong movement, as noted by our Governor Perry, to eliminate what's called sanctuary cities, which basically don't exist in Texas. I mean, who really knows of a sanctuary city where an immigrant who's undocumented can live freely without ever fearing for being separated from their families.